In this episode, I want to talk to you about how I bring positive psychology into the work that I do around narcissistic trauma. Now, you may almost think, oh, positive? What? How can anything positive come from having any form of relationship with a narcissist? Well, positive psychology is something that I use in all the work that I do. In fact, I use it in my everyday life as well. And I would really love to share that gift with you so that maybe you could look at using an element of positive psychology too. So some of you might be thinking, well, what is positive psychology? Well, psychology is a study of what is wrong with people. And we've spent many, many years studying that. Where positive psychology, it's a relatively new science. It was founded probably about 25 years ago now by a man called Martin Seligman. And positive psychology is really the science of what is right with people. And what they did was they did this huge study over the years of not looking at what was wrong with people, but actually the people who were thriving and flourishing in life. What were they doing? Because surely that's how we want to live our life, right? So it was really looking at, well, what is it they're doing? What are they focusing on to live this higher level living, this kind of life of increased well-being? And they started off with thousands of different traits. And they narrowed it all down and they came up with what we call the PERMA profile. Now, initially, it was PERMA as in PERMA, that was it. Whereas now it's PERMAH. And let me explain why. So the PERMA without the H stands for positive emotion, engagement, relationships, meaning, and achievement. And they looked at those 5 key pillars to start off with, that if people focused on those, they could really help increase their well-being. Then they realized that was literally just focusing on the neck up. So they added the H in, the health element of that, which incorporates your nutrition, your sleep, and your movement or exercise. So all of those 6 traits then, those 6 pillars, the PERMA profile, positive emotion, engagement, relationships, meaning, achievement, and health. If you focus on those, then we can increase our happiness to live a more joyful and connected life. Because at the end of the day, that's what we all want, isn't it? And that might seem like an impossibility when you're dealing with a narcissist. But there's something also in positive psychology that we call post-traumatic growth. Now, you've probably heard of complex post-traumatic stress disorder, which is what most people will be suffering with, having been in any kind of relationship with a narcissist. So what exactly is this post-traumatic growth then? Well, post-traumatic growth was coined to really say to people that because of the struggle that you have been through, because of the trauma that you have had, actually this can be a catalyst and an awakening for you to have incredible growth and actually go on and lead an even more deeper, joyful, connected life because of the trauma that you have been through. Now, I certainly know if someone had said this to me as I was healing from the narcissist, years ago, I'd have probably thought, don't be ridiculous. How am I ever going to lead an even better life because I've had a relationship with a narcissist? And I hear you because I was the same. If someone had said that to me, I'd have thought, don't be so crazy. Of course, I'm not going to feel like that. So I do understand that, but I just want you to kind of maybe get curious about all of this. And I'm going to share my story with this a little bit so that you can see the growth I had because of that. So when I was in the relationship with a narcissist, and when that relationship broke down, we went through a divorce, I realized we were in a huge amount of debt, and I had complex PTSD, depression, anxiety. Pretty much every day would start with a panic attack on the bathroom floor, and I used to self-harm as well. So I was really at rock bottom. I was really trying to do the best I could as a single mum to my 2 children. But again, that critical voice in myself, look at you, you're in a broken home now, you're bringing your kids up like that, you're a single mum. So there was a huge amount of shame, a huge amount of guilt going on there too. And I couldn't really see any light at the end of the tunnel. In fact, I've always said, had it not been for my kids, I wouldn't be here right now doing what I do. But they were my driving force with all of that. And at that time, I kind of thought, this is it. I'm just going to kind of meander along in my life. I didn't have any money. I certainly didn't feel good about myself. I didn't like looking at myself in the mirror or anything like that. And I felt really, really at rock bottom. So the thought of having any type of growth at that stage felt like a complete impossibility. It was like, you know, if you spoke to me about growth or anything, it would be like you just told me to run 10 marathons and then go and climb Mount Everest. It just seemed an impossible task to be able to do. And this is why when we look at healing narcissistic trauma, we have to look at being really intentional and using really specific modalities and tools to be able to help you. Because whilst talking therapy absolutely has a place in validating your experience and having somebody listen to you, that only accesses the front part of our brain. That isn't where trauma is stuck. Trauma is stuck in our body. It's in our limbic system. It's in a completely different part of our brain. So if we're looking to heal narcissistic trauma, narcissistic abuse, we need to be able to access those areas of the brain, the limbic system, the body. Because trauma isn't the narcissist. The trauma to us is what we say to ourselves on a very deep level within our body about the behavior of the narcissist. And that's very, very different then to everything else that we know when we think about this. So yes, talking can help, absolutely. But if we really want to deeply heal as to why we're in that relationship, why do we react the way that we do, we have to do somatic work with all of that. And that's something that I do, particularly in my narcissistic trauma recovery program. So it's really important to recognize that in the narcissistic trauma recovery program that I have, we're really looking at the brain and the mind, absolutely, but also in the body. So I do things like EMDR, internal family systems, brain spotting, which I absolutely love, just really helping process and timestamp past events into the past so that we're not reacting to them in the present moment. So when I realized that for my healing, I really needed to, you know, look at this from a real holistic whole body approach, brain, mind, and body, I started to see a light. I started to see a light at the end of the tunnel. And I was able then to almost, and I almost liken it to an awakening. You know, I'm very sciencey, as you all know. But it felt like an awakening of what's important in your life. And had I not had the narcissist in my life, then yeah, I'd have probably ticked along in my life and I'd have had a good life, so to speak, maybe. But having had that experience and almost hitting rock bottom and really looking deep, deep within and really looking to heal those wounds that were causing activation for me in the present has now allowed me to lead an even better life, even more joy, even more connection, even more love in my life because of the trauma I went through with the narcissist. And then once we start to have that post-traumatic growth, now, once you've had post-traumatic growth, it's unlikely I will have that again, because having had post-traumatic growth and done all that inner work, my resiliency now is up here. You know, it's really, really high. So the likelihood is if I had something major happen to me again, the likelihood is I wouldn't have post-traumatic growth again because I've already now built up my own resilience levels to be able to cope. That doesn't mean that I wouldn't be upset or hurt or whatever it is that would happen in my life. It just means I have such a deeper understanding of everything as well. And my body wouldn't necessarily activate into fight, flight, or freeze as that perception of danger. So the growth then that you can have, where do you then go from there? So once then I've helped you look at all of this and start to have that post-traumatic growth, areas of your life that are actually even deeper now because of the trauma, finding that strength in your struggle, where do we focus on our life? And this is where we look then at the PERMA. We look at those 6 key pillars in your life, you know, the positive emotion, you know, how much joyful moments do you have in your life? Are you creating with intention those aspects of your life to thrive and flourish? And engagement, you know, that connection with other people, relationships, you know, how are you fostering and nurturing your key relationships in your life and bringing maybe new friendships into your circle? Meaning, do you have meaning in your life? You know, I certainly know meaning. I certainly feel this is my purpose. But again, there could be a difference between meaning and purpose. So bringing some meaning into your life can help increase your well-being. Achievement. Now, when I say achievement, that doesn't mean you just need to have these massive, massive goals that you're never ever going to achieve. We can have achievement in our life each and every day, but having that and feeling that sense of achievement really helps increase our well-being. And then our health, what's your sleep routine like? Are you getting a restful night's sleep and nurturing yourself? What are you eating like? Are you feeding your body? Are you moving your body? I don't necessarily like calling it exercise because I think that has connotations then of I must go to the gym, and that then stops people from going. So for me, it's movement. Are you moving each and every day? Are you getting your body moving? And then if we're focusing on those 6 key pillars as we're coming out of our healing from narcissistic trauma, then we're going to always be focused on then up-leveling our well-being, always thinking about how we can focus on those to really help increase and thrive and flourish in whatever it is that we are doing. And the reason why I wanted to do this episode is so many times we're focusing on the past, we're focusing on the stuff you don't want, we're focusing on healing, all the inner work. Totally get all of that. But I wanted to throw in an episode really to talk to you about positive psychology in the work that I do, and also hope. I suppose in this episode, I want to be your hope merchant. That it doesn't mean your life is over. It doesn't mean that this needs to define you. Actually, you can go on and lead an even better life, an even more deeply connected life. When I look at my life now, I have remarried now. I'm totally financially independent and my children are happy and I get to do this. So for me now, that epitomizes post-traumatic growth. And I love in my community when I see all of this and I say post-traumatic growth right there. And then what we want to do is focus on, well, how do we live our happiest version life? How do we do that? What is it we need to do? And positive psychology allows us to really focus on these 6 pillars as well. So do you think you've had post-traumatic growth? And if you're right in the thick of it right now, does it seem an impossibility? Because I want you to know it isn't. Where you are right now doesn't mean this is where you are always going to have to be, but I want you to really get intentional with your healing. It's great listening to my podcast and YouTube channel and everything like that. It's great because I'm going to be telling you stuff, hopefully, that can reassure you it's not your fault and we can start to get that shame and guilt from this. But I want you to get intentional. Now, I'm not saying to come and do my narcissistic trauma recovery program, but I want you to really think about doing some body work as well as brain and mind work about helping you heal the trauma of narcissistic abuse. Because it's really important for you to get the right kind of support to heal, because time doesn't heal narcissistic abuse. It just doesn't. You have to be intentional. You can end up leaving it, going back to how you were and living an okay life, but I don't want that for you. I want you to live an amazing life, because an amazing life is exactly what is available to you. And I want you to know that. So this episode, I'm being your hope merchant. I'm being your hope merchant and saying, this isn't where you need to be, but let me know. Share with me. Does it seem an impossibility that in some way you could find more strength in this struggle? Because I'd love to know your thoughts on it.